Is Panama's real estate bubble popping? How would we even know, and who are we to know, right? There's a good answer to that. We've been calling foreign real estate bubbles ever since we went offshore. And I'm going to give you a little more detail on Panama's real estate bubble in a minute. Here in Panama, what you see is banks that are holding real estate trying to get the high prices of yesteryear, but the real estate is just sitting there literally rotting. I have seen real estate completely vandalized because the knuckle-headed bankers are still trying to get retail prices from yesteryear, even though there's no bids, and especially when they see a gringo. You know, when they see a gringo, they get all smiley and they get all excited because they think they're going to get that retail price. If you go to our Discover Cuenca Ecuador blog, even back from the early years, 2012, 2013, we were saying things like the locals aren't participating. And that's the first sign of a foreigner-induced real estate bubble. Now, the bubbles in these countries, in most cases, are a little bit different than in the States because typically there isn't any debt underlying the bubbles. What you have is you have different real estate markets abroad that are being pitched. They're being pitched let's just make an example to make it easy to follow. In Panama, you know, first they pitched to the, you know, way back when they first started pitching it, they pitch it to Social Security people. Then they start pitching the very low end of that, and then they start raising that higher and higher as the prices start bubbling. They start pitching to a higher and higher dollar amount. They start out at 600, end up at 1500. Once they get into the 2000s, they start pitching the business people. That's when you start seeing the ads in the Forbes and the business sections, you know, and this kind of thing. And you start seeing articles with a different slant, such as pitching to people that live in Las Vegas, and you know hey, you know, it costs you $10,000, $8,000 a month to live in Las Vegas. You can come to Cuenca for only $2,000 or $3,000, and that's how these bubbles are pushed all the way to the top. And so what you have is a constant upping of the bids from people that are being pitched that are from more expensive and continually more expensive markets. So that to them it looks like a bargain. We saw this forming right off the bat, and we called it immediately. But untypical to the way U.S. bubbles form, which is some of that is present in the U.S. also, because you've got equity retirees is what they're called there. However, there's a lot of the speculators use debt. A lot of speculation use debt. Of course, then the retail public also uses debt. So you've got quite a bit of debt there, and so that when the prices start stalling or they get too high or the economy slows, these people can't make the payments and the bubbles actually pop in the States. Whereas in these foreign markets, what happens is the markets, they're more of a poof. Than a big pop. But what you're seeing is a decaying, you know, just a market that's sitting there just wobbling at the top, and the people that are participants in it aren't necessarily indebted, so they don't really they don't have to sell, but as with anything else, if you have a need to sell, then you need to sell, but it's not debt induced, and you don't have like a large number of people that are indebted. So you're not going to know, and this is why you don't hear about these markets that are actually poofed out. You don't hear about them because you don't see the crashes. But the market is, you know, if we can redefine the word crash, what we're going to define it by the fact that there's no demand, and you start seeing gringos that are stuck in their real estate. I'm seeing gringos that are starting to they're trying to trade off their real estate instead of sell it because there's no bids at the prices that they're at. Here in Panama, what you see is banks that are holding real estate trying to get the high prices of yesteryear, but the real estate is just sitting there literally rotting. I have seen real estate completely vandalized because the knuckle-headed bankers are still trying to get retail prices from yesteryear, even though there's no bids, and especially when they see a gringo. You know, when they see a gringo, they get all smiley and they get all excited because they think they're going to get that retail price. You know, and that retail price of yesteryear is the top of the bubble. When you reach the top of the bubble, you start getting Americans even from big cities, even from Las Vegas or New York or California, whatever, that start saying, gee, why would I spend that much to go there? I can just stay here. And actually, if you've been following our channel, you could have stayed there all along. When it comes to the price of real estate, there's actually better real estate bargains in the US every day of the week. So yeah, you don't really hear about these bubbles in the media, and clearly the people that have created these bubbles aren't going to tell you it's the top of a bubble. You know, they might hint here and there, but they won't spend too much time on it. I mean, you know, that's the subject of a different video. I've got a lot to say about that. So you start seeing these gringos that are stuck and they can't sell their real estate. Here in Panama, the Gringo vicious cycle that we've discussed previously, when it comes into full swing, the crime rates spike, the prices spike, and the crime rates spike. And when the crime rates spike, the gringos flee. So when the gringos flee, the prices pop. So you saw a lot of prices literally just dropping, but you don't hear about it. You don't hear about it. Nobody talks about it. Now in the city, there's a more well-rounded demand. You know, it's not just gringos. In the city, you've got Venezuelans, you've got international digital nomads, or rather location-independent business people. You've got a demand that's kind of a little more well-rounded than some of these other outlying areas here in Panama, especially the beach resort areas. And of course, when we're talking about real estate, there is a little bit of a difference when you talk about the condos, you know, in a community where there's 24-hour security, or whether you're talking freestanding, you know, single-family homes. You know, bubble forms, the prices spike. The crime rates spike. They spike first around the homes, you know, especially the ones that are a little bit out like this. But the people in the condos, they may not feel the top of the bubble as much, because it's sort of like a tourist trap deal, where, you know, if you want to live in a building in Coronado, there's only 3 buildings, and so it's kind of it's like a captive audience. You've got a captive audience there. So so that's what's going on. The prices of the real estate in Panama have been soft. I'm going to say they started going soft 3 years ago. there's a lot of knuckleheadedness from the real estate people, that they're still pumping prices of yesteryear, and you start seeing a lot of low quality real estate too that's still held up to the top of the bubble prices of yesteryear. So that's the whole point. You're not going to see a literal crash like we've seen many times in the States. I've lived through several crashes in the States. I lived through the crash of '81, which was, I was in the worst spot, the U.S. spot of the nation in the U.S. in 1981. Oregon had the highest unemployment rate of the whole nation. You know, they were dependent on the construction industry because of the wood industry. They were heavily dependent on their wood industry, and it just, the place just totally collapsed.
Wasn't that having something to do with the spotted owl?
Well, whatever, you know, but then, you know, when everybody's doing, you know, when everybody's suffering hard financially, they start arguing about stuff. You know. So yeah, I've seen crashes, several crashes in the States, and you don't really see it. You know, what you see here is you recognize it when you go out here and really analyze what's happening. You recognize the signs. You know, you see, you know, like banks with rotting real estate, literally, you know, beautiful homes on land that have been completely gutted and by vandals. And there they are, still hanging on, the bank, still hanging on to it, still trying to get the top of the bubble retail price for it. Just really knuckleheaded, you know. So, okay. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a nice day.